In this video, I explain how you can create a user-defined class and how you can use that. First of all, to create a class, you need to know that a class must have a name. So in this case, the class point with capital P should have a name as a point. And you can do that by just writing the keyword class, then a blank space, and then give the name of the class and then call it. A class can also have a docker string to describe what a class does and how you want to use, how the users can use this class. So in this case, we provided uh, a string in between three quotation marks to explain how the user can use this class. Every class should have a method with a special name called dunder init. It is an abbreviation for initialization. In this case, you can also see that we have a dunder init class with several arguments. This initializer method creates an instance of that class called self inside the class. So you can see here that self is the first argument of the init class, and when a class wants to be created, this method is called by Python. The initializer also creates and sets the attributes using self. In this case, you can see that self.x and self.y are created using the given arguments x underscore and y underscore. And if the user does not provide any values here, we replace x underscore and y underscore with 0, and we create a point of 0 and 0. After creating writing the structure of the class, the code for a class, then you need to place it inside a file and give it a name. In this case, I gave the name point with small p. To create an instance of a class, you need to give it a name. In this case, I want to create three instances of the class point, point 1, point 2, and point 3. These are the names of these instances. So the first activity is to uh, import the class. So what you can do is to just use the keyword from and then give the name of the file, and after that write down import and then give the name of the class. After that, you get inputs from the user so that you can use those input to provide the arguments for the initializers of the class point. To create an instance, you need to provide the instance name, then use an equal sign, then use the name of the class, and in between the parentheses, you need to provide the values for variables, all variables that you can see there excluding self. So here you see that I have created 3 points. Point 1, I will, after point 1, I provided equal sign and then the name of the class, and then I only provided two values, x1 and y1, which are they will when the Python interpreter comes to these three lines of codes, because you have a class name and after that you have a parenthesis, it calls the initializer method to set the attributes. So the great thing is that uh, these points follow a similar structure. That means that if you remember the case of the houses with and the blueprints, the class is the blueprint, and this blueprint includes two attributes, x and y. But each of these points have different states. That means they have different values for x and y. Point 1 will include x1 and y1 as the values for the two attributes. Point 2 has x2 and y2, and point 3 has 0 and 0 as the values of x and y. So this is similar to having green, red, and blue houses. If you change one of the values of x or y, then you say that the state of the class has changed. To access to an instance attributes, you need to provide the name of the instance, then put a dot, and then provide the name of the attribute. For example, if you want to get the value of an attribute, you just provide the name of the instance, in this case point 3, and then dot, and then you provide the name of the attribute x, and then you can set I in this case to the value of x. To change the value of x, again, you can simply use the same uh, structure, point 3 dot x equal to the new value to set the x attribute. The common mistake in accessing an instance attribute is that some students will use the name of the class rather than the name of the instance, or they would use parentheses after the name of the attribute name. So you cannot say point dot x equal to 3. You cannot use point 1 dot x parentheses equal to 3. So take notes of this. Let's pause here for a minute and try to use this class person with capital P that is inside a file called person with a small p.py. So this class is developed by the backend programmer, the Dutch programmer. You are the American programmer. Try to use this class to create an instance of a person. You need to get a name, weight, and height from the user and create one or two instances of person. So here is the answer. You need to again provide to import the class first. So use from, then provide the file name, which is person, then import, and then the name of the class. After that, to create the first instance, you just need to provide a name. In this case, I called it P1, then equal, then you provide the name of the class again, person with capital P, and then you need to provide the arguments. You had 3 arguments in the class person name. In this case, I provided my name, Amin, and then weight, 90, and then the height, which is 1.80. Or you can create the second instance using the inputs given by the user. So get the name, weight, and height, turn weight into integer, turn height into float, and then you will create the second instance in the same way. Note that the second again, the class name person that has parentheses right after that, that's not the name of the class. It calls the donder init, the initializer method. Now try to answer this question. create a simple class by assuming that the front-end programmer American wants to code like below. So pause here for a minute and try to answer this question. So again, you need to use the whatever given by the American to create your class. You know that right after the from clause, you need the file name. So the file name is student with the small s. So you need to call your file student with a small s.py. And then right after the import, you have the name of the class. In this case, student with capital S. You also see the same name right after creating the first instance, which is S1, and you see a parenthesis right after that. That shows that this is for sure a class, and a student is not a method. So you can write down the first uh, part of the first line, class space capital S student, and then colon. After that, you need to create uh, the dunder in it. You provide self there. Then you get back to the creation of the instance where you set s1 equal to student. You see three arguments there. So that means that in addition to self, which is going to be the first argument all the time, the first parameter name all the time, you need to provide three parameter names. I call the first one dunder, underscore name. On the second one underscore SID for a student ID, excuse me, and underscore GPA per years. And then I will use these arguments to create the attributes for that instance. You can see here that right after S1 we have dot and there are no parentheses. That means, and then right after that you have an equal sign. That means that these three are the name of the attributes for an instance because they are used for an instance. So S1, 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 you don't see the name of the class there. So that means inside the dunder init, you need to use self.name, self.sid, and self.gpa years. Always try to copy paste this and then use the arguments in the signature of the dunder init to set these attributes. Note that in this video, you just learned about a simple class that is only a bundle of attributes. You use these kind of class for data storage, data that are related to one another. It's very common, to languages such as C. We don't have, a name for this kind of class in Python, but I'm going to use the C language to call these kind of classes a struct. And whenever I use a struct, I mean that we only have one method in that class under init, and the class only includes attributes. In comparison, you most of the time you have classes that are bundles of attributes and methods. Methods that process attributes to create new information, or they change or return attributes. I would call these classes normal classes. You can see here in the normal point, in addition to x, y, and dunder in it, I have a function called a method called distance from origin that calculates the distance of xy, this point, from 0 and 0. Or I can use set x and set y to change the value of x and y, and get x and get y to get the values, to retrieve the values of x and y. In the next video, I will explain how you can add these methods and how you can use them.